Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing another episode on this series of pro versus anti-Israel candidates. For the anti-Israel candidate, obviously we're going to have JD Vance going up against the pro-Israel candidate, probably the most pro-Israel candidate, Josh Shapiro, or at least openly, to say at least. So before we get on with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss out on any of my content. Make sure you guys press the like button. Don't forget we have memberships. If you're interested, you can find a link to that in the description section. So let's begin with this map, starting off with the likely states. So for Shapiro, I expect him to likely win New Hampshire by an amount of over 5 percentage points. That is considered likely. Probably at around 5 points, no higher, no less, probably around there. I think he should do good among college-educated voters. And New Hampshire in general is a state that kind of rejects populism that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump brings to the party. And considering that J.D. Vance is coming off of the Trump administration, that's not going to be good because the Trump administration is viewed negatively, as we all know so far, and probably will be viewed negatively the entire time for Donald Trump's tenure. So New Hampshire is a state that, college-educated voters specifically, I think, might not do well with someone like Josh Shapiro, who is very openly, probably the most openly pro-Israel candidate, which is where J.D. Vance can do well in, which is why you can argue New Hampshire will only be lean for a candidate like Shapiro. But I'm being generous for him. I'll say likely at that. I think Pennsylvania, a no-brainer, his own home state, will be likely for him. Now don't get me wrong. Now he's not going to win it by as much as he did in the governor's race, and whatever he's going to win by in 2026, it's going to be less, far less, because it's a general election. That's completely, totally different from a governor's race. You can't compare them. So he's not going to win by the 14-point margin he won by in 2022 against Doug Mastriano. He's not even going to win by maybe the margin he wins by in this November in 2026 for the midterms. It's going to be less. So instead of 14, maybe you can drop that margin half to maybe like 7 or 6%. This is a battleground state, and it's true he's a very popular governor, but J.D. Vance is a Rust Belt candidate. You have to remember that. So he's going to bring some competition. Pennsylvania voted to the right of both of those states, but it's still going to be pretty likely, comfortable for Josh Shapiro because he is the governor. So there's that. And that's the likely states for Governor Shapiro. One more, actually, before we move on to J.D. Vance. That's Virginia. Virginia is similar to New Hampshire. It rejects populist candidates. It likes moderates. It likes a candidate that's part of the establishment. You saw Obama, populist. He did not, I believe he's a populist. He did not do that well in the state of Virginia. I mean, not as much more than Kamala did. You can argue Joe Biden did better than Barack Obama. So, Biden's an establishment candidate. Obama is closer to that populist type. Hence why Trump doesn't do well in a state like Virginia. J.D. Vance won't. I expect Virginia to be likely comfortable to Josh Shapiro by maybe about 8 percentage points, a few points improvement from Kamala Harris's margin in 2024. Now moving on to J.D. Vance, I think the only likely state is going to be Texas. Not really too much to talk about there. I don't expect anything to really change. Maybe the issue of immigration won't be as much as a factor. It would make the state a bit closer. And if depending on if Democrats do well in 2026, Texas will be a lot closer in 2028, but still should be good for J.D. Vance. Moving on to the lean states for both of these candidates. Let's begin with J.D. Vance. I think Michigan will be lean for him. I think out of the 3 Rust Belt states, Michigan will be the most that rejects Josh Shapiro, especially among Dearborn, Michigan, maybe in Detroit as well, in the city area, among Arab voters as well. So that's where Donald Trump did so well in 2024. He promised a solution to Gaza, which totally backfired, I should say. Kamala Harris was refusing to reject Israel. She is pro-Israel. That's why Donald Trump won Michigan, and Republicans are not going to, do that well in 2028. It's Democrats neither. That's why neither party is going to do well in Michigan in 2028. It really depends on if you're a pro or anti-Israel candidate. Right now, for this video specifically, J.D. Vance has a better shot at winning Michigan than Josh Shapiro, specifically because of that. And yes, that will be a major factor, not only in the midterms but in 2028, because this is just such a widespread issue that has recently risen to a very, probably among the top 3 issues, to be honest, that we have right now. Other than the economy, inflation, I think foreign policy, especially with pro and Israel candidates specifically, I think that's a top issue moving forward in these elections, which never was before, as much as it is right now. which is crazy to say. So I know Josh Shapiro is a strong Rust Belt candidate. I expect him to do well in the Rust Belt. That's mainly coming from his own home state. Michigan, he's not going to do that well. JD Vance is a Rust Belt candidate coming from Ohio. It borders a state like Michigan. I can see, Michiganders liking JD Vance. So now the lean states for, the lean states for Josh Shapiro. That's the only lean state I have for JD Vance. I think there won't be any lean states for Josh Shapiro, actually. So let's move right on to the tilt states for both of these candidates. I actually think, believe me, when I say this, Georgia's going to be a blue state in 2028, aside from 2026. I think Shapiro can correlate a lot, with the African American community. I think that, his deep voice, his deep tone could be better than someone like JD Vance. And I think Josh Shapiro should do well with the African American turnout, especially in the Atlanta suburban area, in the cities, the most populated areas in Georgia. I think that's where Josh Shapiro can really strive. And it's not just that. In general, Trump didn't even do well in the state of Georgia. He only won it by 2 points in a very red environment in 2024, where Trump gets 312 electoral votes. He wins Georgia by 2 points, literally the exact same margin he won Pennsylvania by. That would be crazy if this was 2016, where you say Pennsylvania and Georgia voted the exact same margin for Donald Trump. That is shocking to hear. So Georgia is going to be a blue state in the future. I expect your average Democrat to flip it in 2028. It doesn't take a great candidate to flip Georgia. Kamala Harris came within 2 points. So I think it's going to be a blue state. I think Shapiro can actually do somewhat decent in the state of Georgia. I think he can win over that Brian Kemp type of voters, specifically the moderate Republicans that are Kemp lovers that don't really like Trump, but they had to vote for him just because they didn't like Kamala. That's the main reason why Trump won it in 2024. In reality, Georgia's a blue state, moving forward. I know it's purple, obviously. It's not a blue state, but that's what we're getting at here, moving in the future. So the tilt states for Shapiro, that's it. The rest will be tilt for JD Vance by meaning within 1 percentage point, under percentage point, like 0.3, 0.6, or 0.9. So Nevada, I expect JD Vance to narrowly pull that off. Arizona, I think Vance barely wins that. I actually think it's going to be closer. I know Trump won it by 5 points, but keep in mind in 2020, which is not that long ago, it's not recent, but it was not that long ago. In terms of elections, Biden won it, Democrat, and Josh Shapiro is similar to someone like Biden, not in terms of sleepiness, but in terms of that moderate style that he has. And the McCain-style voters, they're real. And they didn't hurt Trump in 2024, but they did in 2020. And if that's the case, Shapiro can actually come within striking distance of flipping the state of Arizona. I truly believe so. I think Arizonans, the McCain-style ones, actually are like pro-Israel candidates, and that's that. So I think Shapiro can win it, but because the margin was just so great for Trump, I can't quite say JD Vance is going to lose this state. Now, it's going to get way closer because just like Texas, immigration is not going to be that much of a factor because the issue is calmed down. Right now, we don't have a record number of border crossings, which increases Shapiro's chances. But I just can't quite say he's going to win that. North Carolina, another tilt state for J.D. Vance. I think Vance is a perfect Republican candidate for the state of North Carolina. I think they would like him as their Republican president. And then Wisconsin, I kept going back and forth, just like in Georgia. I wanted to go Shapiro, but I can't simply because I think the anti-Israel rhetoric is going to win in the year of 2028 and 2026. Unfortunate for some of the other side. But I just think J.D. Vance is going to defeat Josh Shapiro. I just can't see a scenario in which Josh Shapiro is president right now. That's quite impossible. Minnesota, I forgot to go over this state. I'm sorry. Minnesota's going to be lean for Shapiro. They don't like populist type of candidates. So J.D. Vance is a populist, obviously. They like more of the establishment moderate type. That's someone like Josh Shapiro. But I think Minnesota is one of those states that's going to want an anti-Israel candidate. But J.D. Vance is not good enough to win a state like Minnesota. If Trump winning 312 electoral votes cannot win Minnesota, you think anyone else on the Republicans right now can? No, that's not going to happen. Ronald Reagan did not even win Minnesota, so Republicans will not win that. So 277 electoral votes for J.D. Vance against Josh Shapiro's 261. I think this will be a very close election, but it's not going to happen because Shapiro will never, ever win the Democratic nomination. So that's pretty much it. This is the map. Interesting map, actually. I've never had this one before. The map looked like this. I never did that before. So one last final reminder is to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content. Press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we have memberships. If you're interested, you can find links to that in the description section. Thank you, everyone.